Here is the thing nobody is telling you. They are showing you the war. They are showing you the missiles, the fires, the maps with arrows. And everything they are showing you is real. But the thing that is going to change your life, maybe for years, is not on that map. It is in a narrow strip of water, 34 miles wide, and most Americans couldn't find it on a globe. The Strait of Hormuz. I am going to tell you what this war is actually going to do to your retirement. Not the stock ticker, not the headline, the real thing. Because I have seen this before. Not this war, this pattern, the oil shock, the inflation that follows, the panic that makes people do the one thing that destroys everything they built. My name is Sal. I have been a cobbler in Brooklyn my entire life. I have watched every war this country has fought since 1939. I have watched every oil crisis since before there was a word for it. And I have watched my customers, good working people, make the same mistake every single time the world catches fire. I am not going to let you make it too. Let me give you a number first, because a number focuses the mind. 20%. That is the share of the world's oil supply that passes through the Strait of Hormuz in a normal year. 20 million barrels a day through a gap of water 34 miles wide, and in some of the narrowest stretches, the shipping lanes are only 2 miles across. 2 miles. I have walked longer distances to get a good cannoli in this city. Since the United States and Israel struck Iran on the 28th of February, that flow has dropped from 20 million barrels a day to something close to nothing. The International Energy Agency, not a political organization, not a think tank with an agenda, the body that exists specifically to track energy supply for the world, called what is happening now the greatest global energy security challenge in history. The greatest in history. Not since 1973, not since the Iranian Revolution, in history. I want you to sit with that for a moment before I continue. Now let me bring it down to where you actually live. On February 26th, 2 days before the strikes, the average gallon of unleaded gas in America cost $2.98. As of this week, it is $3.93. That is a 32% increase in less than a month. When I was a young man, I used to watch my father come home from his factory shift and put the week's wages on the kitchen table. Some weeks there was money left over after the rent and the food. Most weeks there wasn't. And when the price of coal went up in the winter of 1932, I watched my father make the same decision hundreds of thousands of families made that year. Heat the apartment or feed the children. You could not always do both. I am not saying we are there. We are not there. But I am saying I know what it looks like when energy prices start moving up faster than wages. I have seen that movie. It does not end in the first reel. Here is where it goes next. You are already feeling it at the pump. What you are not feeling yet, but you will, is everything downstream of oil. Think about how a gallon of milk gets to your grocery store. Somebody grew that grain that fed those cows. That grain required fertilizer. That fertilizer requires natural gas to manufacture. And 20% of the world's natural gas, liquefied natural gas, LNG, also moves through the Strait of Hormuz. On March 2nd, Iran struck Qatar. Qatar Energy suspended its LNG production. Qatar supplies 1/5 of the world's LNG. Prices jumped almost 60% in days. The fertilizer this country's farmers need to plant this spring is getting more expensive right now. The nitrogen in the ground that becomes the corn, that becomes the cereal in your cabinet, that supply chain runs through the Persian Gulf. Urea prices, the most widely used synthetic nitrogen fertilizer on Earth, have already jumped 30% since the conflict began. The World Economic Forum says spring planting decisions are being made right now across North America, across South America, across India, against a backdrop of price spikes nobody planned for. The food price increases you are going to see at the grocery store in the fall, those are being decided right now, by what is happening right now. The delay between the oil shock and the grocery shelf is 6 to 9 months. What you pay for bread in October is a consequence of what is happening in March. Deloitte put it plainly in a report this week. Utility prices were already up 6.7% year over year before the war started. Beef and food inflation was already in double digits, and then this happened on top of it. Let me tell you about a winter I remember. I was 54 years old. I had a shoe shop on Bay Ridge Avenue and 2 kids still in the house. I remember the day the gas lines started. I remember driving to a station at 5 in the morning to get a spot. I remember the odd-even rationing. Your license plate ended in an odd number. You bought gas on odd days. Even number, even days. I remember being told what days I could fill my tank. In the country I had spent 30 years building a business in. But here's the thing I remember more than the gas lines. I remember what it did to people's nerves. The fear that came first, then the anger, and then, this is the part that costs people real money, the panic. People took their savings out of things they should have left alone. They did things with their money that made sense in October and looked crazy by March of the following year. The 1973 oil embargo hit in October. By 1975, the economy had turned a corner. People who held on came out okay. People who panicked at the bottom of the market in late 1974, they locked in those losses permanently. They never got that money back. I watched it happen. I watched good people make terrible decisions under terrible pressure. What I am telling you right now is that pressure is building again. And the pressure is the enemy, not the war. Here is what the war has done to your retirement account so far. The S&P 500 is down roughly 5 to 6% from its early February highs. The Dow has dropped around 9% from its peak. The VIX, Wall Street's fear gauge, spiked from the mid-teens to above 30 in early March. That is the level it hit during the worst of the tariff panic last year. More than half of all American adults own stocks, most of them through retirement accounts, a 401k, an IRA, a pension with equity exposure. When the S&P drops 5%, that is not an abstraction. One retiree in Los Angeles, 89 years old, depends on his investments to supplement Social Security, told a reporter this week, "It is a lot. In dollars, it is. It's in the thousands." He is right, and he is not alone. But here is the number that should give you the other side of this. Across 40 major geopolitical events spanning 85 years, wars, assassinations, terrorist attacks, oil embargoes, the S&P 500 lost an average of less than 1% in the first month. And 6 months after each event, the market had gained an average of 3.4%. 5 out of the last 6 major U.S. military conflicts, going back to World War II, the S&P 500 was higher 5 years later, significantly higher. The one exception was Vietnam, which coincided with a structural inflation crisis that had nothing to do with the war itself. History does not repeat, but it does rhyme. And the rhyme here says, "The people who hold on come out. The people who sell in a panic, they don't." I want to tell you about a customer of mine. I will not say his real name. I will call him Danny. Danny was a longshoreman, hands like slabs of beef. Came in every 3 months to get the same pair of work boots resold. He wore through them faster than almost anyone I ever serviced. In 1974, Danny came into my shop looking pale. He had been watching the market drop for months, and he had decided he was getting out, cashing out his union pension contributions, putting it all in the savings account. Safe, he said. Better to have it in cash than watch it disappear. I told him, "Danny, you are selling the ticket after the game started. The bottom is not far away. Wait." He didn't wait. By 1976, the market had recovered everything it lost. By 1980, it was significantly higher. Danny watched all of that from the sidelines with his money sitting in a savings account earning 4%. He never forgave himself. Not for losing the money. He didn't lose it exactly. He lost the growth. He locked himself out of the recovery. I have told that story to a dozen people since February. I will keep telling it. Now I want to give you the complication, because there is one, and I am too old to pretend it isn't there. The scenario that worries economists, the real one, not the scary headline, is stagflation. Stagflation is when you have inflation going up and economic growth going down at the same time. It is the worst combination for a central bank because the tools that fix one make the other worse. You raise rates to fight inflation. You slow the economy. You cut rates to stimulate growth. You let inflation run. The 1973 oil embargo created exactly this condition. The Federal Reserve did not get it right. They let inflation run too long and then overcorrected. It took most of the decade to unwind. If the Strait of Hormuz stays effectively closed for months, not weeks, months, the economists at Capital Economics project oil could reach $130 a barrel in the second quarter. In a worst-case scenario, some analysts see $150. At $100 a barrel sustained, analysts at Evercore ISI calculated the resulting energy costs wipe out every benefit that the 2025 tax cuts delivered for the bottom 70% of earners. The top 30% still come out ahead. Everyone else gets a bill. This is the environment that Federal Reserve policymakers are staring at right now. They were already divided before the war. Some members wanted to cut rates because the job market was softening. Some wanted to wait because inflation was still above target. Now they have an energy shock landing on top of that. The first rate cut of 2026, which was expected earlier, is now being pushed toward the third quarter at the earliest. Higher rates for longer. That hits mortgage rates, already up 0.5 point since the war started, from just under 6% to 6.5%. It hits borrowing. It hits the housing market. It hits every retiree who was counting on a certain rate environment. I am not telling you this to frighten you. I am telling you because the man who doesn't know about the weather doesn't bring an umbrella. Knowing is not the same as panicking. Here is the counterargument, the one that serious people make, and they are not wrong. The United States is a net exporter of energy now. In 1973, we were deeply dependent on Middle Eastern oil. Today, we produce over 13 million barrels a day domestically. That is a fundamentally different position. And the world economy has shown in recent years that it can absorb enormous shocks. The Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 was supposed to be catastrophic. It was bad, very bad for Europe, genuinely devastating for people on the ground, but the global economy did not collapse. The 2025 tariff shock was predicted to cause a recession. It caused pain. It did not cause a depression. Economists at Chatham House and Capital Economics both noted that if the conflict stays short, and provided there is no lasting damage to energy infrastructure, most advanced economies should absorb this shock without catastrophic disruption. These are serious people saying serious things. I do not dismiss them. What I say is, they are right about the average case. They are right about the probable outcome. But the average case is not the only case. And the thing about an oil shock in a narrow strait is that one bad week, one expanded conflict, one sunken tanker that closes the lane for longer changes the average case into a worse case faster than most people are prepared for. So you prepare for the average case, and you know where the exits are in case of the worse one. So what do you actually do? I am a cobbler. I am not a financial advisor. I want to say that clearly. You should talk to someone who knows your specific situation, your age, your debts, your timeline, your health. But here is what I have watched work over 80 years of watching people navigate crises. And none of it requires you to predict the future. If you are 10 or more years from retirement, the research is remarkably clear. Do nothing. Stay in. The recoveries are documented. The people who left during Vietnam, during 1973, during 2008, during the tariff panic last year, the ones who held on came out whole. The ones who bailed in fear are still waiting for the right moment to get back in. There is no right moment. There is only staying in. If you are close to retirement, 5 years or less, this is the time to look at whether your allocation still reflects what you actually need. Not because the war will ruin you, but because if you were letting stocks take up a larger and larger share of your portfolio during the bull run, and you haven't rebalanced, you may be carrying more risk than you intended. This is the checkup you should have done anyway. Do it now. If you are already retired and living on your portfolio, the key is liquidity. Do you have 1 to 2 years of living expenses in cash or short-term bonds? If you do, you can ride out a market downturn without being forced to sell equities at the bottom. That is the whole game. You never want to be forced to sell when the market is down. Keep enough safe money to give the riskier money time to recover. And if you own energy stocks, well, they are having a very good month. That is the hedge that most people don't think about until the moment it becomes obvious. My wife Gloria, God rest her, used to say that I worried too much about things I couldn't change and not enough about the things I could. She was right. She was usually right. I cannot change what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz. I cannot change what the Federal Reserve is going to do with interest rates. I cannot change the price of oil or the price of fertilizer or what they are going to cost at the supermarket in November. What I can change is whether I make a decision in fear that I will regret in calm. Gloria died in January of last year. She was 94. We were married 33 years. And in those 33 years, we went through the 1990 recession, the dot-com crash, September 11th, 2008, COVID, the tariff panic of 2025. We went through all of it. And every single time, the thing that saved us was not the right investment strategy. It was the decision not to panic, not to be naive, to know the risks, to plan for the bad outcomes, and then to refuse to make fear the loudest voice in the room. Here is what I know. I was born in 1919. I came to this country in 1927 with $40 and a satchel of tools. I have buried 2 wives, raised 2 children, rebuilt a shoe shop after a fire that took everything, lived through the Depression on bread and determination, and watched this country survive things that everyone at the time said were unsurvivable. It is still here. So am I. The Iran war is going to cost you something. I will not pretend otherwise. It is already costing you something. At the pump, in your portfolio statement, in the grocery aisles in the months ahead. If it drags on, it will cost you more. That is the honest truth. But the thing that will determine how you come out of this is not the price of oil. It is not the S&P 500. It is whether you make your decisions from evidence or from fear. I have been resoling shoes since 1934. I have put new bottoms on the same pair of boots 5, 6, 7 times because the man inside them needed to keep walking. That is the whole philosophy. The world catches fire. The boots wear down. You bring them in. You put new soles on them, and you keep walking. That is all there is.